Good evening, I'm Andrew Myers, and I am the chairman tonight, the temporary chairman of the Derry Planning Board for this, our official meeting of October 4th, 2023. We start all of our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand and join me? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so I'm here because our chairman, John O'Connor, apparently is under the weather. We wish John well. I'm not sure, will John be joining us online? Okay, you can let us know later. And our vice chairman, Dave Nelson, is on vacation, so here I am. I'm the secretary. In the beginning of the meeting, I will appoint a secretary, Richard Malaby.
Oh, it's a long way downhill to me. Thank you very much.
Okay, the emergency exits are in the back. Don't use the elevator if there is an exit. If you want to join us by Zoom, you can do that. The meeting ID is 754-663-912. The telephone numbers, if you'd like to join us on the telephone, are 646-558-8656 or 312-626-6799, or there's one more, 301-715-8592. And if you're joining us by phone, the meeting ID is 754-663-912. If you have any problems calling in during the scheduled meeting time, contact 603-845-5585. Did I forget to introduce all the members?
Nope, you did perfect. Now you can do that because you did everything the right way. So
Okay, thank you, George. Thank you for bearing with me.
no problem.
So I will introduce the people that are here this evening. George Sioris is the Derry Planning Director.
Good evening.
Member Randall Chase.
Good evening.
Member Dan Healy.
Good evening.
Member Jim Grenice, who's here from the Town Council.
Dave, good evening.
Did I say Jim?
You did say.
Dave Grenice. All the way at the end, Mark LaRue, the Town Engineer.
Good evening.
We have Chris Feinauer
Good evening.
and Richard Malaby.
Thank you very much.
Did I miss anyone?
Dave Nelson.
Oh, and Dave Nelson is here on Zoom. Hello, Dave, how are you?
Hello,
Good to see you.
John O'Connor is also here.
Oh, John.
John O'Connor is here on Zoom.
Yes,
John,
yes,
good to see you. I hope you're feeling better.
getting there.
Actually, I can't see you, but I see your name on the screen, and I hear your voice. So, okay, John O'Connor, our chairman, is here on Zoom. So we'll move forward to administrative business, and the first thing on the agenda is escrow accounts, number 23-13, Starbucks. Starbucks developer is the same, escrow amount is the same. It's a letter of credit to the Camden National Bank. The parcel ID location is 35018. They're located at 68 Crystal Avenue, and it is requested that we approve a final release in the amount of $148,113.36 for the above noted project. The amount to retain is zero. This escrow is non-interest bearing.
So moved.
Second.
Do we need a roll call on this?
Yes, can you all say the name? Lisa's doing the minutes from home. She's not feeling well tonight, so if you can just say like who seconded it, and then you do a roll call.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just for the record, so Lisa can hear that at home.
Okay.
Please. Thank you.
And so, not Jim, Dave Grenice moved the case, and Richard Malaby seconded. So I will call the roll. Randall Chase.
Yes.
Dan Healy.
Yes.
Dave Grenice. Chris Feinauer.
Yes.
Richard Malaby.
Yes.
John O'Connor.
Yes,
And Dave Nelson.
Yes.
Okay, that passes.
You need to vote.
Oh, and the chair votes yes. Thank you. The next item is another escrow account. It is 23-14, Nico Land LLC. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is, the project name is Subdivision Mill Road, Alyssa Drive. It is parcel ID location 06040-001 over at 45 Mill Road. And the action that's being requested here is to please renew the letter of credit number 2 drawn on Washington Savings Bank in the amount of $15,422.40 for the above noted project. The letter of credit has an automatic renewal provision. The expiration date shall be October 8th of 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and so we had the, moved by not Jim, but Dave Grenice, and seconded by Richard Malaby. And we'll take a roll call. Randall?
Yes.
Dan Healy?
Yes.
Dave Grenice?
Yes.
Richard Malaby?
Yes.
Chris Feinauer?
Yes.
And John O'Connor?
Yes.
Dave Nelson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. That passes unanimously. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at those?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm just noticing something now. Under members, it has my last name as Myers.
I'm looking to see if I
It's
can
the
see.
very last one under
Members
members.
present.
Yes.
Oh, all the way at the top, yeah, Dan Myers, yeah. That's my middle name, but okay, we'll ask that that be changed. Are there any other changes?
Mr. Chairman, on the absent, alternate, Jim Granesi, it should be probably,
Dave.
no, who's, the alternate is, John Morrison.
Oh, okay, so under absent, we're striking
Jim Granesi, and it should be, John Morrison.
John
Morrison.
Morrison. Okay, I'm just writing it in on my copy. Okay,
I move to approve the minutes if there's no other changes, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
okay, and so Lisa, that was, the motion was by Dave Grenice, and the second was by Richard Malaby, and I'll call the roll. Randall Chase.
Yes.
Dan Healy.
Yes.
Yes.
Dave Grenice. Richard Malaby.
Yes.
Chris Feinauer.
Yes.
John O'Connor.
Yes.
And Dave Nelson.
Yes.
Okay, and the chair votes yes. We move on. Mr. Secretary, is there any correspondence?
Mr. Chair, the cupboard is bare.
Okay.
No correspondence.
All right, after correspondence, other business. George, do we have any other business?
We have no other business tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, this is moving right along. The next item is Planning Director Chairman updates. Mr. Planning Director, do we have any updates?
Just real quick, just a reminder, we have vacancies on the alternate positions. We have two that are currently vacant, and Mark Connors, if he should resign because he's moving out of town, and then John Morrison is the current alternate if John gets bumped up. So we'll have three vacancies. Sheila Bodenrader asked me to remind everybody, if people are interested, reach out to Sheila because the council will have to make those appointments.
Okay.
That's all I have.
I would encourage anybody watching to, if you're interested in town affairs, to apply. You can go online, I understand. It's pretty easy these days. You can just go right online and apply.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, so that's it for other business. No other planning director or chairman updates. And so we now move to a public hearing. We have one public hearing this evening. The applicant is Hoya Docs. Am I pronouncing that right? Hoya Docs? And George, maybe you can fill us in on this briefly?
Sure, real quick. The applicant is Hoya Docs LLC. This is the Ahern Nichols Dental Office. I think some of the partners on 32 Pinkerton Street. The project is located in the General Commercial District. The purpose is to put a 2,085 square foot addition and an associated parking lot expansion. All town departments have reviewed and signed the plan. There are 3 waiver requests, which the engineer Paul can explain in more detail. There is a state permit pending, New Hampshire DES wetlands permit. We have a copy in the file. They're waiting for final approval. Staff would recommend approval of both the waiver and the waiver request and the site plan applications. I'll turn it over to Paul Chisholm, who's a civil engineer, and he can introduce his team.
Yeah, please, would you identify yourselves just for the record and proceed?
Absolutely. Thank you, George. For the record, Paul Chisholm with Keach Nordstrom Associates. I'm a professional engineer. We are the engineers and surveyors of record. I'm joined tonight by Ken File with he's the project architect, as well as John Ahern from the practice. And Don Hersey as well, from the practice as well. So like George said, this is a practice that's been around in town for practicing for over 35 years. It's a family dentist office. They exist at 32 Pinkerton Street. The site is a little over 1.5 acres. The general idea is a small building expansion that's adding on a wing off kind of the south side of the building that's about 31 by 31 feet. Along with that, a parking lot expansion which goes through a wet area of the site and outlets onto Corwin Street. This site is a triple frontage lot. It enjoys frontage on Pinkerton Street to the north, Peabody Road to the west, and Corwin Street to the south. It's in an interesting neighborhood in terms of there's a variety of different uses around. Single-family homes to the east, a large condo development just directly across the street to the north, commercial developments to the west. Obviously, not far down the road is Pinkerton Academy. The Shaw's Plaza is not far. In fact, that's really where all the water from the site kind of drains to and through as it kind of leaves this general area in the neighborhood block. To speak on the wetland permit, basically the first step in the development process for this project was really just to kind of find out what it would take from a regulatory standpoint to get an approval through not just the State of New Hampshire Wetlands Bureau, but also the local Conservation Commission. We met with the Conservation Commission roughly about a year ago to kind of kick off that process and worked through a number of things with them, a couple meetings, site visits, that sort of thing. And then applied to the state. There's a pending application. Basically, everything's for all intents and purposes approved. However, there's a mitigation fee that's to the tune of like $45,000 that's associated with this. Obviously, they don't want to take the risk of paying the fee to get the permit without having all other approvals in place. So once the project is formally approved, then they'll pay the fee and formally get the permit. But it's basically waiting in kind of a purgatory, if you will, until that date happens. So we keep filing extensions, and the state's happy to grant them. So on that end, that's kind of how that has played out. The existing site is, in fact, I think the existing building was built sometime around like in the 1960s, so it's a pretty older development, if you will. There was a parking lot you can see really extends right up to the existing right-of-way line at the corner of Pinkerton and Peabody. There was an expansion, I think, sometime in the mid-'80s, maybe 1985 or so, and you can see the other end of the east side of the parking lot on adjacent to Pinkerton Street is set a little bit further back. I think some different regulations kicked in, some of the things that we're kind of dealing with on this project now in terms of landscape buffering and things like that to the street, and that's why you see a couple different setbacks there. The existing parking lot to the south currently only exits to Peabody Road. With this new addition, we'll add a number of spaces in this back area, also provide additional connectivity and a second driveway for that back lot out to Corwin Street. To account for the additional impervious areas and developmental impacts from a stormwater perspective, there's 2 bioretention ponds that are small scale. They're going to be planted. They're going to look like landscaping areas, kind of blend in. They're very shallow. It's a good BMP to use in terms of TSS and different pollutant removal efficiencies, but as well as it looks nice, you can dress it up. It kind of blends in with the landscaping. It doesn't look so much like a stormwater feature. So it's very functional and aesthetic at the same time. The site currently does have some site lighting. There's going to be some additional lighting that's constructed as part of the project. And then a number of landscape areas will be enhanced with this project as well. In terms of the waivers that are being requested, there's 3. I don't know if you want me to read them into the record. We did write a letter. I can just kind of briefly explain them and then answer whatever questions.
It'd be a good idea for you to read it into the record.
Okay,
and then
absolutely.
comment. Yes,
So the
please.
first is from Article V, Section 17029K, which states the minimum pipe size shall be 12 inches in diameter for privately maintained storm drainage systems and 15 inches in diameter for publicly maintained storm drainage systems. The minimum depth of cover from the road or ground surface to the crown of the pipe shall not be less than 3 feet. The project proposes 2 12-inch drainage pipes that do not meet the minimum cover requirements of 3 feet. To remedy this, the design calls for the installation of more rigid PVC SDR26 pipes in place of the standard flexible HDPE pipes. It is also important to note that the minimum of 2 feet of cover is maintained for both pipes in the worst-case scenario. Strict conformity with the regulation would pose a hardship to the applicant as the site is constricted by the invert of the 15-inch outlet pipe in the southwest corner of the lot. Furthermore, granting this waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation, as the proposed drainage pipes will function as intended on privately owned and maintained parking lot, and material upgrade will provide sufficient structural integrity. So that's the first one. The second one is Article 9, Section 170.63A2, which states all on-site parking spaces, service or delivery aisles, interior drives, aisles, and vehicular access ways shall be set back a minimum of 10 feet from all side and rear property lines and a minimum of 15 feet from all front property lines in all zoning districts of the town of Derry, except within the central business district. Within the central business district, setback dimensions shall be 5 feet from all property lines. The project proposes a parking lot expansion that will add 22 additional parking spaces, 2 of which are proposed within the 15 feet of the front property line, and those are the 2 that are closest to Corwin Street on the south end of the site. The lot is currently developed with 16 parking spaces that do not meet this regulation along Pinkerton Street and Peabody Road. Additionally, the lot is bound by public streets on 3 sides, making it more challenging to conform to this regulation. Strict conformity would pose a hardship to the applicant as there is not adequate space between the street and the existing building, which was constructed in 1969. Furthermore, granting this waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation, as the character of the property will be maintained. And then the third and final waiver is Article 9, Section 170.64B1, which states a street tree strip 15 feet in width running parallel to the frontage of any non-residential or multifamily residential property shall be provided in all zoning districts except the central business district and the traditional business overlay district. Within any street tree strip, a minimum of 1 indigenous shade tree such as oak, maple, elm, ash, linden, etc., with a minimum caliper of 2.5 inches and branching height of not less than 8 feet at the time of planting shall be provided for each 50 feet of street frontage. Street trees shall be planted not closer than 25 feet to one another. This project proposes 6 street trees where 14 street trees are required by the regulation. As the property has frontage on 3 public streets totaling 718 linear feet, a large amount of trees is required. Strict conformity with the regulation would pose a hardship to the applicant as the current driveway and parking lot layout does not provide adequate space for planting street trees. Furthermore, granting this waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation, as the street trees are proposed wherever practical along the frontage, and a natural woodland buffer will be maintained along Corwin Street. I think really at the heart of the issue here is this is an existing older development that was originally built in the 60s. In terms of the drainage, for example, you know, we're set with how the area was built up and constructed, and we have to make things flow downhill to that. So something had to give in this case, in which, working with Mark LaRue, we ultimately decided that pipe cover was the thing that made the most sense. Obviously, you know, in terms of the landscaping, we're enhancing where we can. And in our opinion, it didn't make sense to kind of cut down more trees along the naturally wooded area just to plant new trees in their place. It seemed kind of to make more sense to us to just leave the existing things up. So that's really kind of just the added narrative on that. At this point, I'll turn it over to Ken. He'll briefly run you through the architecture and the proposed building additions, and then we'd be happy to turn it over to you folks for any questions and answer whatever you might have. Thank you.
Good evening, board. My name is Ken File. I'm the owner and architect of LYF Architects. So the building addition, as Paul had mentioned, is approximately 31 by 31. It's a 2-story addition, matching the height and roof line of the existing south L portion of the building. It's really to create a new entry from this new main parking lot area. Yeah, if you don't mind. So there's the first floor, showing the new entry, stair, and accessible lift to allow to connect both stories. You can take the next page. Just take the whole thing down. Thank you. Second floor, again, more treatment rooms, lab, and stairs, and again, the lift. For the exterior of the building, you can see we're adding on again to the south L portion of the building. Again, approximately 31 feet. We were replacing all the existing white vinyl siding on the building with new blue-gray siding. We are adding a black window trim to the existing windows. To then, I guess if you go to the next page, you'll see the new entry location where we are providing a new black storefront entry system, canopy. Above the entry area, we actually have a simulated wood panel, composite panel, to provide an accent to the front entry. And then we have vertical black wood simulated metal siding to simulate to create an entry corner to easily identify the entry. We are also adding on a small employee entry vestibule that has the same similar architectural character to the building. There's already existing door there. And we are matching the existing height of the building and roof lines. And I have examples of materials if anybody would like to see that. But that's the brief overview of the architecture.
Okay, thank you.
Questions by the board?
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to accept jurisdiction. I move to accept jurisdiction of the site plan before the board of Hoyo Docks, LLC, PID 3602532 Pinkerton Street.
Okay, motion was made by Mr. Grinici, and it was seconded by Mr. Malaby. I'll call the roll. Randall Chase.
Yes.
Dan Healy.
Yes.
Dave Grenice.
Yes.
Richard Malaby.
Yes.
Chris Feinauer.
Yes.
John O'Connor.
Yes.
Dave Nelson. And the chair votes yes, and so that passes unanimously. We've accepted jurisdiction.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a move, determination of regional impact pursuant to RSA 36:56. The board finds the proposal as presented at this time meets the definition of a development of regional impact.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Grenici, second by Mr. Malaby. I'll poll the board. Randall Chase.
No. This is a small project, does not meet the definition of a regional impact.
Dan Healy.
No, for the same reasons.
Dave Grenice.
No, for the same reasons.
Richard Malaby.
No, for the same reason, Mr. Chase.
Chris Feinauer.
No, for the same reasons.
John O'Connor.
No, for the same reason.
And Dave Nelson.
No, for the same reasons.
And I will also vote no, so that vote is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Grenici and second by Mr. Malaby. I'll poll the board again. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
John O'Connor.
Yes.
Dave Nelson.
Yes.
And I vote yes, and so it's unanimous. We will now open a public hearing. If you two would just like step back so that we can have any members of the public. If any members of the public would like to step forward to the podium, please identify yourself and speak clearly into the microphone.
Seeing none rise online, Mr. Chair.
I was just going to ask.
We got
Thank you, Owen. If there's any member of the public that would like to speak, please do so, or we're going to move the meeting along. Thank you. Come on up. Your name, please, and address.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me here tonight. My name's Doug Stevens. I live at and own the property at 28 Pinkerton Street. So I'm just to the right of the property you're talking about here. We've lived there for about 7.5 years, and as I told the ZBA before, we couldn't have asked for better neighbors. These people have been great. There's never been any loud parties at night. I've never had to call the police.
What?
I know.
With that laughing gas?
They take great pride in the appearance of their property. There's always someone there maintaining the property, whether it be mowing the lawn, taking care of their many flower gardens and shrubs. There was someone there a couple weeks ago repainting the front walkway and steps. As I say, they take great pride in their property. To me, this is a small business, as I think was mentioned, that's growing. They're looking to expand so they can continue to grow. Small business growth isn't just good for them, it's good for everybody. Whether it be just the neighborhood, the other businesses in the area that'll benefit from the increased foot traffic, from the town as a whole. So I support what they're trying to do, and without reservation, and I hope that you're able to support them as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak? Going once, going twice. Oh, and no one else? I'll entertain a
All right,
motion.
Mr. Chairman, seeing no one raising to the occasion, no one online, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion was by Mr. Grenice and it was second by Mr. Malaby. Poll the board. Randall Chase.
Yes.
Dan Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
John O'Connor.
Yes.
Dave Nelson.
Yes.
And I vote yes, and so the meeting is closed unanimously. I'll entertain questions by the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make a comment. I think this is a great plan. Everything looks good, plus we have an abutter saying how wonderful the place is, and there's no parties. I don't know why. But so, I mean, you know, this is straightforward unless anybody else on the board has any issues or concerns. I just want to make sure Mr. LaRue is all set with anything and with the waivers and stuff.
Paul and I have worked out any of the details, and it's good to go.
I just have one question. I heard you talk about the third waiver, but I just feel like I have to ask. I heard you read the reason for the waiver, but what is the reason why you can't comply with additional trees? I mean, you know, we all like to think of things as being green.
Sure, I'm gonna pull up the landscaping plan.
Okay. I'm not busting your balls. I'm interested in knowing.
Chops.
Thank God we're on cable. Beat that, Owen.
Chairman, out of order.
It's not the worst thing, it's better. Sitting in jail 6 days.
No, it's not.
So,
I'm
I
sorry.
just want to point your attention to the plan. You know, obviously, there's a small amount of landscaping areas where we do put in street trees where we can. For example, I'll kind of start in the northeast corner of the site along Pinkerton Street. There's that grass strip that's, you know, 15 feet wide, and we put 3 street trees in there. And then as you kind of round the corner, there's a large piece of frontage where we just, you know, the pavement is right up onto the edge of the property. And so there just really isn't a lot of room. We do have room for 1 tree in there, but obviously as you kind of continue around, the further you go, the more the code says that you need that. I would probably venture to guess that in 1965, that regulation didn't exist in that form or fashion, and so it was kind of put in that way. To make that area compliant would really reduce the number of parking spaces. Although it's well above what the code requires for parking spaces, the business practice in their experience on the property really, they just require as much as they can. So that's kind of why we're doing this the way that we are. John, please, yeah.
And Mr. Soroy will tell you that that's a highly traveled street there.
John.
And so,
Just state your name for the record.
Oh,
Only because our clerk is home, so.
sorry, my name's John Ahern. And so that's a busy area there where to have trees planted in the front with leaves and everything else, I think it's more of a safety issue at this stage of the game, the way the property was built. So to add trees there, I think that George would probably be a little annoyed when the roots start growing up and destroying his pavement.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean? It's just not, it's really not designed that.
Sight distance issues.
And the back, the side is the same thing to the road, because it's really narrow that it already exists. So that's why we decided to leave the wooded area in the back and sort of compensate for things that way. And again, it's more of a safety issue, because it would look prettier if we had trees there, but it is. And
All right, I heard your neighbors speak very highly about the way the property's maintained, so I really have no further questions. I just like to know, that's all. Any other questions by the board? Questions? Well, I'll entertain a motion.
John or Dave have any issues?
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. John, Dave, do you have any questions, comments?
All set.
All set.
All right, so if no one on the board has any issues, I'm going to do all the 3 waivers all together. Anybody have any issues?
That's fine.
All right, seeing no, Mr. Chairman, I move to grant the waivers, move to grant waivers for the following section, LDCR section 170-29K, 3 feet of pipe coverage for drainage, LDCR section 170-63A2, parking spaces closer than 15 feet from the property line, LDCR section 170-64B1, allow for 6 trees where 14 are required. After review of the waiver request from the board finds that strict conformity to the regulations would pose unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Renisi and a second by Mr. Malaby on the 3 waivers together. I'll poll the board. Randall Chase.
Yes.
Dan Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Richard Malaby.
Yes.
Chris Feinauer.
Yes.
And John O'Connor.
Yes.
Dave Nelson.
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes also, so that passes unanimously.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move to find the proposed plan does not alter the existing conditions which would affect access to the lots, ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood remains unchanged as a result of the site plan. The proposed site plan would allow for the expansion of the dental offices and the need for additional parking at the site.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Bernice and a second by Mr. Malaby. I'll poll the board. Randall Chase.
Yes.
Dan Healy.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Bernice. Richard Malaby.
Yes.
Chris Feinauer.
Yes.
John O'Connor.
Yes.
Dave Nelson.
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that passes
All
unanimously.
right, Mr. Chairman, if there's no other questions or comments from the board, I'd like to make a motion to approve pursuant to RSA 674:4I, completed application with the following conditions. Subject to the owner's signature, subject to the on-site inspection by the town engineer, establish appropriate escrow is required to complete the project, note approved waivers on the site plan, subject to the receipt of applicable state and local permits, NHDS wetlands permits, obtain a written approval from the planning director, designate that the GIS disc is received and is operable and complies with the LDCR section 170-2414C. Conditions precedent shall be met within 6 months.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Bernice and a second by Mr. Malaby. I'll poll the board. Randall Chase.
Yes.
Dan Healy.
Yes.
Dave Bernice.
Yes.
Richard Malaby.
Yes.
Chris Feinauer.
Yes.
John O'Connor.
Yes.
Dave Nelson.
Yes.
And I vote yes, and so that passes unanimously. Congratulations, gentlemen. Good luck with the plan.
Very much.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
I'll look forward to that party with the laughing gas at some point.
You gotta have more parties.
Good luck, congratulations.
I'm surprised you let the grade slide.
That concludes the formal portion of the agenda. Do we have any board member comments? That's the last item on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, the motion is again by Mr. Bernice, and the second is by Mr. Malaby. I'll poll the board. And Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Dan Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Bernice?
Yes.
Richard
Yes.
Malaby? Chris Feinauer?
Yes.
John O'Connor?
Yes.
Dave Nelson?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The meeting is hereby adjourned.
Good job.